Dear students, as part of our discussion on quality of life of older persons, another aspect which we need to understand is what is the policy response towards quality of life of older persons in India. It is very important that before discussing the policy for older persons, we need to know what are the drivers of population aging in India. One of the important aspects is that the fertility rates is reducing. Second is there is a consistent increase in the longevity. Third is there is an improvement in health and nutritional aspects in our society. Then there is a technological advancement through which we can combat communicable diseases, treatment of non-communicable diseases. These are all very important milestones and they are the drivers of population aging in our society. Now, given the rapid growth of elderly population, which is almost double the growth rate of general population, it is a very essential for us to know the situation analysis of elderly in India. India is the second largest population of 60 years. Over 100 millions are there as on now, which is expected to swell to 300 million in another 4 decades. And as you all know, majority of 3/4 of our elderly, they live in rural areas. Further more important that 1/3 live below the poverty line and another 1/3 just above the poverty level. That shows that nearly 2/3 of our elderly are below poverty line or just above the poverty line. That means the financial aspects and health conditions are very essential, which we need to address given the financial insecurity that our elderly are experiencing in our society. Another important aspect which we need to understand is that the work participation is also very high compared to other countries, especially in developed countries, mainly because the elderly are compelled to work and also to take care of themselves. The other aspect which we need to know is that given most of them are from the informal sector, there is no assurance for them to have the retirement benefits or pension benefits. As long as they can continue to work and earn. If due to their factors like health and other aspects, if they are not able to work, they will not be able to get any daily wage or any other wages. So, given in these scenarios, what comes out is that their vulnerability increases, and also given this, their participation because of this will also hamper their financial independency. The other aspect is that given that majority of the elderly, they are residing in rural areas, the important aspect is that given the rural areas having a lack of proper infrastructure facilities, lot of good public amenities, all these factors also influences low quality of life for our elderly. That is why rural aging is one of the important aspects which we need to focus, so that if we want to target for the benefit for the elderly, if we have to target for rural elderly, how best they can improve their conditions. Another important thing is, given the rural-urban migration among youth, which is compelling the youth to move away from their place of origin, which is mostly in rural areas, the youth, when they move out, the distance becomes a factor, their physical presence becomes an issue, and that also contributes for the vulnerability of the elderly. That is why, though migration is one of the important aspects that is a part of the development process, it is also is a deterrent when we are talking about quality of the elderly in our society. So, these people, elderly people who are not having caregivers, because by movement of youth population to the urban areas, they are left on their own, and their heavy dependency on the neighbors and to take care of themselves is also another factor which we need to understand. The other aspect is about feminization of aging. Feminization of aging, what it clearly indicates that female elderly, their issues are increasingly coming up at higher levels because their proportion is increasing day by day compared to men. What it indicates clearly is that given their vulnerability and also given their low quality of life in terms of dependency on other members and also not having access to the resources, what it indicates is their vulnerability multiplies, and that is why when we talk about vulnerability among elderly also becomes multiple vulnerability issues. So these are one important aspects which we need to understand, that the multiple aspects of vulnerability like rural areas of their living, then gender-wise female elderly are increasing, the disability aspects, the illiteracy, the lack of opportunities in work employment, the other independency which they are not able to achieve, and the access to resources, all these are becoming an issues which will compel them to restrict their participation in the mainstream of development, and all these factors individually and collectively make a major contributory factors when we are addressing their quality of life. So these are some of the context in which we need to understand that the issues of older persons are becoming many and complex, and increasingly they become vulnerable not only due to their physical disabilities, but also due to various social, economical, psychological and health related issues. That is why when we want to focus on vulnerability, it is very important to identify what are the various specific areas of vulnerability. For instance, their dependency in old age due to longer life expectancy increases, high levels of illiteracy, which also has an impact on productive employment, increasing number of older parents and also elderly in general, reducing levels of potential support, feminization of elderly, increased livelihood of widowhood, increase of likelihood of widowhood. These are important aspects which we need to understand. In this context, the government's commitment through the announcement of national policy on older persons way back in 1999 is very, very important and significant. And this is very important because when we are talking about international efforts on aging and enhancement of the quality of life that has experienced, the United Nations effort of bringing first international conference by bringing various countries is very important. India is part of that, signatory to this, commitment, and which all have brought out to make an effort of bringing appropriate policies and schemes for the benefit of the elderly. Coming back to national policy on older persons, which was declared in 1999, is an important milestone because due to this, there is an interministerial committee of as large as 22 ministries and departments have been formed. There are various state interdepartmental committees, and there is a National Council for Older Persons was constituted. They are all very important when we are talking about national policy on older persons. In 2010, the government constituted a committee to review this policy in 4 major areas like issues about the oldest old, safety and security, healthcare, and gender perspectives. Some of the important core areas in which we need to address aging issues are in the area of health, women or gender issues, economic and social security, intergenerational issues, NGO programs, security and law and order issues, promotion of research, then realizing the potential of elderly, various welfare measures in the area of housing and shelter, the training aspect and manpower issues, the role of media. They are all very important. That is why a comprehensive document of national policy on older persons, which has touched upon all these components which have a direct or indirect contributory factors for improving the quality of life of elderly, is a very well recognized by the government of India. What it requires is we need to understand what are the specific components in this policy which have a measure, which have an implications for its implementation at a ground level is one of the important aspects which we need it. One of the important aspect for highlighting in this NPOP is that the strategies to implement this policy has also been highlighted. For instance, it stressed on the wider dissemination of the policy document has been mentioned, so that the constant public focus on elderly issues can be recognized. The other important is that how best collaborative action among all stakeholders which are required has also been emphasized in this policy. Another aspect is about interministerial committee formation to coordinate matters related to aging issues is also clearly stated. And to important aspect of the financial allocation, appropriate action plans, and also to assess the input output when we are talking about aspects. The National Policy on Older Person document also emphasized the implementation and also the issues that are required when you are implementing a program is also highlighted very well in the document. For instance, there is a stress on about how there should be a wider dissemination among the elderly and other members in the society about the content of the policy, so as to see that there is a constant public focus on these issues of elderly. Similarly, there is a collective collaborative action that is required has also been stressed in the document, so that various stakeholders will form a collaborative effort in understanding and also attempting through their various programs and schemes. It also highlighted the need for interministerial committees to coordinate matters related to aging issues. And through various action plans, it stressed about the importance of action plans to address the needs of the elderly. And it also stressed that there should be a regular, detailed review for every 3 years, so that the issues related to aging and also the programs and schemes in terms of their achievements, in terms of gap analysis, in terms of taking appropriate measures, so that those issues which are not yet been addressed or which have been inadequately addressed can be taken care of by allocating further additional resources and also to work out the definite action plan to move further in terms of addressing these issues. Important is the National Council for Older Persons, which has been formed, is an important milestone where those who are associated with aging issues also can constantly and regularly advise the ministry in terms of the issues of elderly and how best those issues have to be attempted and tackled in our society. There is also an important aspect of role of Panchayat Raj institutions, because at the grassroots level, especially in rural areas, to address rural aging, the roles of Panchayat Raj institutions are very important and also a very important aspects of and segment of the population, which is rural aging, is correctly addressed through Panchayat Raj institutions. Further, in the document, it is also very clearly stated that there should be appropriate organizations set up for the implementation, coordination and monitoring of the policy, so that the organization structure will take care of how best we can evolve new schemes and programs, so that they will be properly taken care of, and also for important issues that what are the important emerging issues when we are implementing various programs and schemes for targeting the elderly population in our society. For instance, what the review of earlier studies and also the assessment of various programs and schemes, what it clearly indicates is that there are a large number of programs during the last 10 to 15 years, but they are all largely uncoordinated. So, there is a need for cohesiveness among the programs. Mainly, ad hoc initiatives rather than long-term continuing programs is another area that has emerged from these reviews. No well-defined central and regional monitoring and evaluation mechanisms, making impact or effectiveness difficulties to assess is another area that is emerging. A meager data to determine program coverage at the grassroots level to determine the number of beneficiaries is another aspect which requires attention. Similarly, the program benefits to reach older elderly people, especially in rural areas and those below poverty line, is also another aspect which need the concerns of the monitoring and evaluation agencies. The important critical issues to focus is, in the case of India's elderly, important hallmark of characteristics we can take is there is a heterogeneity among the elderly. There is a huge variations in the socio-economic conditions. The setting in which the elderly are located in our country is another important aspect. In terms of the regional differences, in terms of socio-economic class groups, in terms of their health conditions, in terms of their social developmental issues, all these makes a difference. That is why the uniqueness of India's elderly is heterogeneity. Similarly, health issues plays an important role. Economic and social security issues is another aspect. Security and law and order issues are another important. Elder abuse is emerging in a major way. The multiple vulnerability among the elderly is another aspect that is very crucial when we are addressing the issues like that. Way back in 2011, the draft national policy for senior citizens was announced, which is a revision to the first policy which has existed way back in 1999. The draft national policy for senior citizens has emphasized that a separate department for senior citizens should be created. A national commission for senior citizens with implementation and judicial powers is suggested. National Council of Senior Citizens to monitor the policy implementation process has been referred. There should be a regular fund allocation to increase of the elderly population. The role of panchayats and gram sabhas to have a defined role and funding allotted to the elderly in rural areas is also mentioned. Uniform age for defining elderly and their benefits across all the departments is another aspect which is been followed and which requires attention by the policymakers, is another important aspect that has been stressed here. Then social pension pillar to be strengthened by increasing allocation of resources, pension amount to be indexed because of inflation. A system to review pension amount is also mentioned. Health insurance to grow by 70% is another important aspect which needs the attention of the policymakers so as to see how best we can have a uniform and also universal health insurance scheme has to be evolved. Public-private partnerships needs to be explored for elderly care. There is a clear methodology for implementation of building old age homes is an important aspect that requires some standards for running these old age homes. Care standards and caregiving standards have to be spelled out. Need to build vocational training and resource training centers exclusively for elderly is another measure that has been highlighted. Setup of National Center of Excellence to look into dementia and retired, and related ailments is another important aspect that has been stressed in this draft policy. Use of the term senior citizens instead of older persons, since dignity is important aspect, that is also highlighted in this draft policy. Then helplines is another measure that should be addressed in each district, since elder abuse is increasing in our society, is also stressed. Another area of important is there are set of interventions that have been suggested. One of the important aspect, for example, to encourage individuals to make provisions for their own as well as their spouse old age, to encourage families to take care of the older members of their family, to enable and support voluntary and non-governmental organizations to supplement the care provided by the family with a greater emphasis on non-institutional care, to provide care and protection to the vulnerable elderly, especially widows, the frail, handicapped, abused and destitute elderly, to provide healthcare facilities especially suited to the elderly is another dimension, to provide research and training facilities to train geriatric caregivers and service providers for the elderly, to continually evaluate and upgrade existing services and programs for older people is another dimension, to facilitate and strengthen intersectoral partnerships in the field, to create awareness regarding elderly persons to develop themselves into fully independent citizens is another important aspect that has been stressed. Furthermore, there are set of recommendations that need to be considered when we can highlight some of these issues. There is a need for suitable programs that have to be initiated for strengthening institution of family, because this is one of the important aspects that family support, how best we can promote in our society, is an important aspect that needs an attention and priority among all the stakeholders who are addressing the aging issues. Another important aspect is that given the low nutritional standards, supplementary nutrition programs targeting the needy elderly in the poor localities needs to be addressed. Local NGOs, the policies and the programs, if you review, it's very clear that given the institution of family is very important in developing countries like India, we need to strengthen and promote various programs and schemes that can strengthen the institution of family. That is one of the important aspects which we need to understand. Second aspect is, for instance, when there is a nutritional inadequacy for the elderly exists, how best we can promote supplementary nutrition programs which can target the needy elderly, especially living in the poor localities, may be considered as another dimension. Local NGOs may regularly interact with the elderly of their community and assess their needs. Need assessment is very important so that appropriate suitable interventions can be worked out by the NGOs so as to see that the elderly are taken care of. Other aspect is about appropriate and suitable elder-friendly designs that may be in the areas of housing, transportation, workplace and recreational locations is an important aspect, is where we are talking about elder-friendly localities have to be taken care of so that we can promote social participation of the elderly. Otherwise, social isolation will become one of the important aspects that will promote more and more the depressions, and also the mental health issues will increase, and that is one of the important aspects which will bring low quality of life among the elderly. The other major gap is training of professional and para-professionals in terms of organizing and promoting various services and programs for this component of the care of the elderly that also needs a priority. The government programs and policies for the welfare of the older persons to be provided at the information related to these programs have to be taken care of, not only for the elderly but also for the community members in general, so that through various information awareness programs, if we can provide, there is a sensitivity which can come up in our society so that community members will find their respect and dignity that is required for the elderly in our society. The other important is to promote intergenerational bond that is very much required among children, youth and elderly members. There is need for promoting through sensitivity of these young segments of population towards the elderly issues, so that with the suitable programs we can improve their sensitivity, and also it will create a lot of importance among the youth population to understand the need of improving the dignity of the elderly so that the ageism and also the neglect can be minimized in the society. The other aspect is the social isolation. Social isolation will improve the elder abuse in our society. If to the what extent if elderly can be taken into the mainstream of the society, automatically they will feel that they belong to the society, so that once their issues are to be seen, then it will be very important that the young members also to see that they need not focus on the neglect of the elderly, and also they should not abuse the elderly members. The other important aspect is how best we can have a partnerships between, because the government alone cannot issue and take up various programs. Though the various programs are there, it is important that the partnership is very important, because at a community level, the grassroots level NGOs, non-governmental organizations and the local government officials, if we can promote a partnership in initiating for various community programs, so that by keeping the needs of the older persons in mind, if these programs are channelized, it will give a lot of importance for both government as well as a non-government organization to come together and initiate various appropriate suitable policies for these elderly people, so that the elderly people not only become passive receivers of care, but also they become very positive in their participation, and also they become active in their contribution, so that the age integrated society can be established, so that all members of age groups, especially the elderly members of crossing certain age group, they will also feel that they are partners, and so that their respect, their dignity, their independency will also be taken care of, so that their quality of life will greatly enhance. So that we can say that the age-friendly society is an important aspect in our society, which we all feel that we are able to undertake and achieve for the coming years of the time. So, given these, what in conclusion I would like to say is that elderly issues not only are complex, they are also increasingly coming up, and in the process intergenerational bonds are weakening. The institution of family has a major role to play, but when the members are of heterogeneous groups and they are physically not able to stay there, and given the rural urban migration, the elderly members, their quality of life issues are coming up. So, to address this, not only of announcing various policies and programs by the government, but also it is important that at a community level, how best these programs and schemes can percolate, and also that there should be appropriate partnership between government and NGOs, so that when all actors, all the stakeholders are coming together, definitely it makes a lot of difference. Such good practices are very much required, so as to highlight and replicate and scale it, such programs at various levels of, whether it is a local government, local or the government level, or at a state and district level, so that across all the geographical areas we can have a common and appropriate suitable programs, so that everybody in our society, especially the elderly, can benefit from these things, so that we can see that optimum utilization of resources and all the age groups can become part of this development process.